Okay, so it's great to follow Mitch. It's always great to follow Mitch because there's really a sense, we were talking about this over lunch yesterday, that there's a kind of kindred spiritness there. And I feel that a lot here in the room. Certainly, as Mozilla has looked to learning as one of our big priorities, and Michelle will talk about that, that whole kind of spirit of lifelong kindergarten, the whole idea that playing and making is learning is something that we've seen as central to how we want to work, and central to basically how the internet has grown. But there's also, I think, a theme you'll see pick up and echoed from what Mitch is saying, that the idea that we want to sort of teach programming or teach algorithmic thinking to everybody to express themselves is actually much more important than the idea of minting more engineers. And that's really, really a critical theme. So we want to talk, that's our topic for today, is we're going to talk about that making as learning theme, and particularly about web making as learning. And I guess it's really exciting to know that we're going to come here and talk about that, because some of the news about possible curriculum changes, well, you can have a lot of debate about the specific words, really here in England is unprecedented compared to what we see in other countries. I mean, the idea that you might teach something like computer science, although you may nitpick over the words, isn't something I would hear in Canada or we would hear in the US coming from a minister or a secretary. And I think wherever it ends up in the actual curriculum, there's an impulse there that is very similar to where Mozilla's at, very similar to what Mitch just talked about, which is as we live in a world that is increasingly built with code, we also need to live in a world where we can move from people who are users of that code to people who are makers of that code. And being able to make code, be able to understand how the world is programmed, is something that all of us need, and not something that just engineers or just programmers should be able to do. So that's shaped some of what we think is important going forward for Mozilla.
Yeah. So Mozilla has made a commitment this year and going forward to learning. And we're really hoping that our learning programs are going to have the same sort of impact that Mozilla has had with Firefox. So what we're really aiming for here is to create a generation of web makers. And what this really refers to is creating things. It's making things, it's expressing yourself, and there's sort of two parts to this. There's the very technical skills that people need to know. It's their sort of toolkit to interact and build things on the web. And that's your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript, those kinds of technical skills. But there's also a whole group of skills that we feel really passionate about. And that's the open ethos in which the web was built. And that's things all about sharing, collaborating, remixing, how to actually use the full potential of the web and to preserve those elements to the web that make the web so great.
And so, that's where we're going this year as Mozilla, is to focus on this web making piece. And in order to, it's kind of a lofty idea. So in order to maybe dig into that lofty idea for a second, I actually need help from my son, Ethan. So this is my son, Ethan. He's 10. And just like Mitch, he likes Lego. And I think there's something primal in why we like Lego, or something central, is that we all do like to make things. And we like, the thing that is built into the design of Lego, which is, I can build something quite beautiful. I mean, it's really astounding what you see people build with Lego. But you can also see the lines, and you can see that it's something that you can take apart, you can remix, that there's unlimited potential in what Lego is, and that's in the design. And the thing that we want Ethan to know, and the thing that we really want everyone to know, is the web is exactly like that. The web is exactly like Lego in its design to be pulled apart and remixed, in its design to be a set of open building blocks that anybody can build anything with. And so often, certainly when a 10-year-old looks at a web page, they think that it looks like that. I think increasingly we all are in this sort of world of very beautifully designed, although I wish that was a little more beautiful, beautifully designed websites that are kind of shiny, or iPads that are kind of more oriented towards an elegant consumption. But really what the internet is, it's not this, or what the web is, it's not this. It's actually made of this. And we don't want to see that all the time, but knowing, just like when we see the lines on the Lego, that the web is made up of code, that every web page we see is rendered and could be pulled apart and remixed, that we could make it into anything, or that we could fork something like happens in the Scratch examples Mitch gave. That's an essential thing that all of us need to know. It doesn't mean we use it every day, but it's important to our understanding of the web. And so we want Ethan to know that the web is Lego. We want him to look at the web as something that he could build anything with. And we want him to be a web maker. And in fact, we want tens of millions of kids and adults to get that spirit of the internet, to get those skills, and to be web makers.
So really, this is not about creating a world of computer scientists or software engineers. I went through a computer science curriculum. I spent 5 years in college learning computer science, and I can tell you that my classes were all math, 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 and then for some variety, some linear algebra. And that's not what we want to impose upon people here. We're not trying to create a whole bunch of career computer scientists. This is way more about the fourth literacy. The idea that the world today is shaped not just by grammar and math, but it's built upon technology and the web. And you have to be able to understand it to participate, to create things, to really become a web citizen is part of the new definition of civic duty. Part of being a citizen is being a web citizen. And so we really want to raise everybody's knowledge to the point that they can participate. They can create demos and show what they mean to other engineers. They can communicate with each other. They can share their ideas. They can build things. That's what we're talking about here.
And so, we're just as Mozilla and with our Kindred Spirits and the people we've been reaching out and talking to at this very beginning of what is a incredibly ambitious project, which is to imagine tens, maybe hundreds of millions more people gaining this spirit, gaining these skills of being a web maker. And the question is where to start. I mean, we've really just been talking about this for about a year, sort of made a commitment at the end of last year to make this a top priority for us. And so, we started with some experiments. And one of the first experiments we did was just to invite kids to tinker, to go out to people who run community workshops with kids in libraries and museums, community centers, and invite them to tinker with the web, see what would happen. And so we created a very, very small piece of software called the X-ray goggles that lets kids see, or lets anybody see, those Lego lines on the web, see that the web is made up of pieces that they can remix. And so we use that goggle software. Oh, by the way, this is my son Tristan. He's 12. He's going to show us the goggles. So we use the goggles in the context of something called Hackasaurus, where we sort of teach kids to tinker. And so, Hackasaurus is really just a simple way or the goggles are a simple way to inspect a web page. So Tristan's just turned them on, and you can now see these are the different elements in the web page without having to get overwhelmed by all of the code that's there. And what Tristan's going to do right now is going to hit R for remix, and he's going to see the one element that he was moused over. So he's just going to see the Google logo. And Tristan, he does YouTube things. He's got his own YouTube site, so he knows what an image is. He says, oh, well, it's an image, and I see that's a GIF file. I'm just going to throw my own logo in there. And now he's got his Tristan Surman Hell Yeah Gaming version of Google. And it's just a local hack. It's not going to actually change anything. But now he has seen that the web is made of Lego, and is ready to go the next step in saying, what could I build?
So the really awesome thing about this is what Tristan actually learned during this activity. So he learned not only what we're calling restaurant HTML, some very, very basic HTML. So you see, he could see a few tags, kind of got a sense for what they were doing, how they interacted, saw a URL, pasted his own image URL. So it's sort of dabbling a little bit into HTML. But what he also learned was remixing. The idea that the web is not some static thing that somebody created that belongs in a museum somewhere that you can go visit and look at, that it's something that is constantly evolving and that he can be a part of it. He can change it. He can make the web into what he envisions. And so that whole remixing element got incorporated right into learning about the restaurant HTML. And that's part of why we thought that the goggles were so awesome.
So, that goggles experiment, in a very short period of time, we get that light bulb, that Lego light bulb to go on. But why would kids care? I mean, most people don't want to know, how to make HTML. And so the next experiment we did was to say, how do we actually reach people and kind of get into this webmaker spirit, transfer some of these skills? And the answer was very much along the lines that Mitch talked about. Look at their passion. And so, don't teach about the web, teach about fashion, teach about music, teach about filmmaking. And we don't know about any of those things. So what we've started to do is reach out to people who do and say, can we roll in or help you roll in a web-making component? So this is a video that I'm going to show with a group that we worked in San Francisco called BAVAC, where we just helped or participated in some workshops they run for young filmmakers. And these are young filmmakers who are going to end up going to Sundance, are very promising. And we help them think about what their films might look like in the world of the web. We need sound here.
I became a maker, I think, pretty much ever since I could really think. I'm really passionate about social justice and like creative media and stuff.
I've been making films since I was little, ever since I got the video camera in my hands from the home videos that my dad would make.
I feel like you understand movies and you appreciate them more.
I have these visions and these plans in my mind. I just want to put them out.
I feel like you can use film for a lot of different things without really being like an expert at everything.
I thought the web native concept was like mind-boggling at first. I really didn't know how to process it for a while.
Because we're not webby people, we're filmmakers. This is a filmmaking program, so we were kind of like, why? We don't know what to do. We don't know HTML. We don't know any of this stuff. So it was such like a weird thing.
It'd be really useful just to press like the up button and we go like right here around the end of it.
That's good usability stuff because otherwise you have to move that exactly
Yeah.
where you want.
I thought that was really smart that we were able to give that like immediate feedback and then have a product from that. And I'm really like pretty like happy with the things that we've produced for our web native, like because it gives you the chance to like delve into one site that City Slickers has, and you can really like explore it. You can watch a short video we've made about it. You can see photos that other people have posted.
When we took that project, we made it web native, and we're using Google Maps. Things become more real. I feel as though the viewers who watch it online will realize, like, wow, this history really happened in the inner city. So let's say if you're from New York or you're from Houston or any inner cities, they can easily relate it to these revolutionary acts happening in a neighborhood that's quite like mine.
And so there's actually a couple more film projects that came out of that. We cut the video short. But really what that was, film workshop, where they made web-native versions of their films.
Yeah, and the important thing here is that, you know, this wasn't a class about programming. These were filmmakers who were making films and who their goal was the actual film. This was a filmmaking class. They just happened to learn about various web technologies as they were fulfilling their goal of making movies. And that's what's really so cool about this, is that the learning sort of happened accidentally, stealthily. They didn't realize that, you know, they weren't going in and told, okay, here's a bunch of HTML tags, we need you to all memorize what they do. They were saying, I want something to be italicized here, how do I do that? So there's a whole bunch of skills that they learned all throughout doing this. As you heard them describe, you know, they came in not knowing any HTML, and they were able to put together a web page by the end of it. And the cool thing here was that they didn't just learn, you know, the HTML tags, like I said, but they also learned the concept of how the web is put together. And so now when they visit another web page, if they go to visit Google or Facebook, they have a little bit more insight into how that web page is put together. The other really cool stuff is, you saw they were talking about how their video shows some Google Street View video at the same time as their audio. And the cool thing about this was that they got to learn a little bit about how to pull data from an API. Now, this is a non-trivial software engineering task that they were learning. But the cool thing is, they didn't just learn, you know, here's a bunch of code, here's how you actually do it. What they were learning is actually, there's a whole bunch of interesting data out there on the web. Things like Google Street View, things like a Twitter stream, a bunch of images, and that content that's out there, you can pull in, you can use. It's something that you can actually reach out there and touch. And so they learned not only the technical side of that, but also that sort of softer side as well. And the exact same thing with the fact that the software they were using allows you to put events at a certain timeline. This is essentially programming, but without the command line. It's a different kind of programming. It's a way of thinking about, I have a problem, and I want to break it down into algorithmic components. What is actually going to happen when? What do I want the user experience to be? And so they were able to start thinking along that way, even though we're not sitting them down and teaching them computer science.
And the really important point here to underline from what Michelle is saying is that it's making something where there's then a desire to go and pick up these skills that matter. So, and tens of millions of kids, probably more every day, show up on the internet to make a thing. So what we're saying very clearly is we want to, if we imagine a web literate planet, we want these kinds of skills to be something, and these kinds of thinking patterns to be something very broadly out there in the world, leveraging the fact that kids show up every day on the internet to make a thing, and going from there seems to be a pretty good place to start. And that's what we've been experimenting with. And I think that, but the problem, of course, like with the computer science curriculum announcement that we were impressed by here in the UK a couple weeks ago, we're just at the beginning of this. We have huge ambitions. We've made a few experiments, but we really actually don't know all of the pieces, or even most of the pieces of how we're going to do that. This is we've got a theory, and we have a big ambition. And the problem is, Mozilla is actually quite small. Firefox is something that's in the hands of almost 500 million people, but it's still only a 600-person organization. There's some tens of thousands of volunteers who work on it. In terms of actually getting to the point where we imagine this as a fourth literacy, where we imagine the ethos and the building blocks of the web as something in the hands of everyone, that's a much bigger job than we can possibly imagine taking on our own. So luckily, that's where people like Emma come in. Some of you probably know Emma Mulqueeny from Rewired State. She's doing a hack fest with some kids the other side of this wall. And what Emma does is she also runs something called Young Rewired State, which teaches kids who want to code or have got some promise in coding how to get better at it. And Emma is definitely another one of these kindred spirits. And one of the things we've noticed as we've started to have this conversation is that there are these kindred spirits, there are these people at a grassroots level looking at teaching kids to code, looking at teaching web making, looking at teaching other people to code, popping up everywhere. And they weren't there 18 months ago. And so these are just another 4 groups that in the US and Canada as well that we've worked with who do things similar to Emma with different kinds of audiences. And so in terms of tackling this huge opportunity, in terms of building this generation of web makers, we think the only way to get there is to imagine this kindred, this emergence of these kindred spirits forming a global community of people who want to move in this same direction. And that's something we want to contribute to. So the commitment we've made in 2012 is to try some things and to help contribute to this community. So what can we contribute? Well, there's 3 things we're working on. One is we can contribute software. We're okay at software. And in particular, we're focusing on making software this year that helps people make things on the web, like those interactive videos you saw, doing stuff like what Mitch is doing with Scratch. In fact, we hope to work with MIT on some authoring and creation and programming tools. So we can do that. We can throw that out and let anybody use it. Of course, it's all going to be open source. So creativity software on the web that teaches web making. That's one thing we can offer. The other thing we can offer is curriculum, web making curriculum, and it's something we've started to do. Michelle's group inside of Mozilla is working on that teaches that lesson that the web is Lego, and then starts to build things that build curriculum experiences out that wrap that around the fact that kids want to show up and make a thing. And then the third thing we're working on, and we can talk about this in more detail if people are interested, is badges or micro awards that say, here are some of the web literacy skills that we hope that people would learn. And also, here are some rewards for contributing to this community, for getting involved, for mentoring other people. So we can bring those 3 things to the table, and we will. That's what we're doing this year. But as we look around the world, and we think about the fact that we need so many kindred spirits to do this, and we need a huge community to do this, if you are one of those kindred spirits, the much more important question is, what can you bring to that community? And then we're interested to know how we can help you bring it. And that's what we're doing here today, and that's what we're going to be doing for the next couple of years. So thanks very much.
Thank you.